When a video game gets given a score of 7 out of 10, it's now looked at in a negative way. The only things that are 8 and above are really worth experiencing. And I get it. There's so many great video games all fighting for our time and only so much time to play them. We have to make choices. Mafia the Old Country is once again a case for the 7 out of 10s. I personally don't do review scores, but I do understand their purpose. When I think about the score of a 7, some of my favourite games are the 7 out of 10s. Mafia the Old Country isn't one of those, but it's a video game that I had a great time with, despite some major flaws. Whilst we live in an era of discourse where a product is either the greatest thing of all time, or we talk about it like it just shot your dog, Mafia the Old Country is a competent video game, and it really is true to the Mafia games that came before it. This game positions itself as somewhat of a throwback, a chapter-based linear game that has an open world, but few open world activities, alongside a runtime of around 10 to 12 hours, and to some, that is blasphemy. Fair enough, man. What one person values in a game will be another person's crux. Personally, I'm here for it. I've recently grown tired of bloated, open world games that when we first got Uncharted The Lost Legacy, or Miles Morales, or Guardians of the Galaxy, I'd hoped to see this renaissance of linear story games at a lower price point, which is what Mafia the Old Country is. Where Mafia the Old Country delivers most is in its characters and its story. This is vintage Mafia. Family, betrayal, shootouts, and of course, races. When you're positioning yourself in the way that Mafia does, it means the story must really hit and deliver. And I think for the most part, the game does. The main protagonist Enzo is someone that I connected to and really enjoyed the story that he goes through in this game. He's surrounded too by a great cast of supporting characters that highlight the complexities of these Mafia families. I actually think the plot of this game is enhanced by having minimal open world activities because of how it can be told as just some straight up TV show, to the point where I was actively rooting for and against certain characters. Unfortunately, the game stumbles out of the blocks, which for a game that I beat in 10 hours, I thought the opening 2 hours were bad. The prologue itself does a great job of introducing the world, the character, and some key players, but after that, it takes a while to hit its stride. Some really monotonous mission design and just a lack of any dynamic gameplay. You can afford moments like this in a game that's maybe longer, but as far as first impressions go, the first 2 hours of Mafia I think are really poor. Thankfully, after reaching the first bit of proper action in a gunfight, the game rapidly ramps up and wastes no time thereafter. In those opening 2 hours, the game introduces you to a gameplay scenario that will be prevalent throughout the game. It's 1v1 knife fights. And for me, this was the weakest aspect of this game. These fights would have been fine once or twice in the big stake moments, but they're just dull. When I'm talking about my experience with a video game, I'm thinking about the emotions I felt in the moment. And every time one of these fights would appear, I'd roll my eyes, because there's simply no variety to them. You get them to half health, cutscene or mini event, fight them again. The game tries to add some depth by having a parry, attacks that you can't parry, a thrust, a light attack, and a heavy, but honestly, no enemy ever attacked in a different way, and other than environments, every fight felt exactly the same. When it comes to gameplay, Mafia has always been what I would call serviceable. It's not trying to be the best third-person brawler or shooter out there, but guns always felt fine to shoot. Here, with older weaponry, it does struggle that little bit more. Some guns just don't feel quite right. The best of the bunch was the shotguns and the accurate revolvers, and they do have that punch to them. And to be fair, in some of the late game gunfights, I'd have a really good time. Whether it was using the environmental interactions like throwing a lantern into a gas-filled area, sniping with a long-range carbine, or Gears of War him away from cover to cover with a shotgun. It was good. An element that Mafia struggled with, however, is its stealth scenarios. Look, I love Batman's detective vision, but I'm not sure a Mafia game set in the 1900s should have stealth scenarios of seeing enemies through the wall. It just doesn't really make sense here, but otherwise, the stealth is very simplistic. It's serviceable. There's moments where I throw my knife at one individual, and as another guard reacts, I choke him from behind. But then, really, it's classic old stealth design. You wait behind cover whilst two guards have a conversation. Once the conversation is over, they go their separate ways, and somehow both end up in the perfect situation for a stealth takedown out of sight. Again, there is some interesting ideas here, like your knife having durability, so it has 4 slots of durability. A takedown will reduce 1, opening a locked door or a chest will also reduce 1, and you need a material to recharge it. But the game never really demanded me to make me think about it or use them wisely. There's also a timer that as you're choking an enemy out, you have to do it within a certain time or they'll react, but you can use your knife charge if you're running low and stab him. But again, I never failed that timer. So all I would say is that the stealth is basic and serviceable, but I never really enjoyed it. The game does have a form progression that I was fine with. You have an upgrade system called Charms with 1 major and 4 minors that you can collect in the open world or during missions. You get your 1 big buff like invulnerability, close to death, and then small buffs like loot speed and aiming down sights faster. You also have a list of guns and knives that you can buy, for example durable knives versus thrown ones. Again, the game never really brings in any scenarios that makes you actively think about your loadout before you enter a mission, despite the task. I stuck with the same knife throughout my entirety of the playthrough, so it was way more handy to have a knife that could be thrown, rather than one that had 5 durability stacks, for example. Without doubt, one of the best aspects of Mafia the Old Country is its setting, the town of San Celeste in Sicily. It is gorgeous, man. Oh my god. As I said at the top, there is virtually nothing to do in Mafia the Old Country's open world other than collect newspapers and some statues for upgrades. Some people won't like that, but I look at the open world here as a character for where the plot of the old country goes. Many locations are memorable, and they don't fit into the generic open world category. Between long drives or rides, the game will offer you the ability to skip your journey, but I never did that because I loved taking in the environments here or listen to the conversations between the characters. I don't care much for the newspapers or collectibles, but they do a great job in immersing you in this world and time period, and the game's approach to a minimalistic hub contributes to that. When navigating point to point, the game does not put a path for you to follow, but instead intelligently uses road signs in the world to ensure you go the right way, and I really love this feature. It's a small detail that ensured I stayed immersed rather than an auto drive where I might just pick up my phone, for example. The game does have both chapter replay and an explore mode that lets you go and scoop up any missing collectibles or simply just drive around in this beautifully crafted world. Just don't go expecting this big sandbox to play around in. And yeah, as is classic with Mafia, there are races here. No, they are not better than the ones that came before, but thankfully there's some really great checkpointing that helped me out because driving was so bad on mouse and keyboard, I had to hot swap to controller for any of the driving segments, and even then, it wasn't much better. The cars are cool though, and there's a car cyclopedia, which is also quite a nice touch. Whilst I said that Mafia the Old Country starts poorly, the game is very backloaded in terms of reveals, big set pieces, and more fun gameplay scenarios. There are situations towards the back end of the game that I really love playing through, that feel reminiscent of the Uncharted games, but very bound to the setting of the Old Country. The final few hours took me from, nah, I like this game, to, I'm having a great time with this. The truth is, Mafia the Old Country is simple. It does not reinvent the wheel. There is nothing here on a gameplay front that really wows you, but it is exactly the game it sold itself to be. A linear narrative adventure that's like a playable experience of a Mafia TV show. I say that because the characters are so strong, and the narrative, I think, is well written. Gunplay, considering its older weaponry, is serviceable, and that point's good with the right charms equipped. And when it's accommodated by some bombastic set pieces, I'm having a lot of fun. The stealth and the knife boss fights are forgettable. That were never bad experiences, just not enjoyable ones. I had a great time with this game despite that slow start, and I think this kind of game is important. Sometimes it's fine to not completely reinvent the wheel. As a big comic book fan, I've often said I would take smaller scoped games with frequent stories if we could get them at a faster pace, and they did well enough to keep studios going without these bloated 400 billion budget titles. I think Mafia is well served in this little niche of linear narrative games that it's crafted out for itself. You probably won't walk away from Mafia thinking, this video game changed your life. But you will walk out of it thinking, why can't we get more video games like this? Mafia the Old Country is a case of why you should play the 7 out of 10s. Let me know if you played it, I'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you're interested in picking it up. If you enjoy this review, consider dropping a like, I would really appreciate it. And if you want more of this kind of content, just honest opinions about what I love about video games, consider subscribing. All socials are linked down below. I hope you have a terrific day. Play games, get gains, and I will catch you in the next one.